It's a generally agreed upon sentiment that the Pokemon series has effectively been holding an Everstone for the past 20 years or so now. Game Freak practically perfected the art of sprite-based JRPGs. Their releases on the Game Boy and DS were so full of life and colour in every aspect, from art to world and all the little artistic flourishes in between. In Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire in 2002, you could see your character's reflection in puddles as you ran past them. For the GBA, that still kinda blows my mind. Yet, thanks to the devious intervention of the linear flow of time and technological advancement, Game Freak were eventually forced to tear this Everstone from the clutches of their baby and watch in horror as their adorable little Sobble morphed into this degenerate abomination. I didn't particularly care for Sobble. He was by far my least favourite of the Sword and Shield starters, but even I, upon seeing Inteleon's design for the first time, felt the need to beat a man with a blunt object. As a lifelong Pokemon fan, I have watched the Pokemon series not evolve for the better part of 20 years. When they've finally attempted to, it's produced mixed at best results with Sword and Shield's wild area. Confession time. I didn't play Legends Arceus, okay? I just didn't. It was the first time I ever skipped out on a big 3D Pokemon game because I didn't believe in it. I took a few looks at the trailers, saw the textures, saw some of those bushes and said, that is not a real video game. But observing from afar, it seems that that game's experimentation was far more radical and inspired, but still very mixed and yet to achieve its true potential. So upon finally diving into Game Freak's first true open world main series Pokemon game, my thoughts were, my character has less drip than a urinary tract infection. I look like I could be mugged by Dora the Explorer. And mugged by Dora the Explorer I was, as I wandered off the beaten path before even getting my second gym badge and found myself staring down Hiker Estella's level 30 plus Whiscash with a team heavily weak to ground type. Having blacked out in a non-Nuzlocke run in a Pokemon game for what must have been the first time in at least 7 years, I was awash with an emotion I wasn't sure how to wrestle with. Was this wonderment I was feeling? A genuine sense of adventure? Was it good? Was it bad? Did I just derive pleasure from being beaten up by a giant muscular hiker lady? Well, this is Hard Drive Reviews. I am your greatest treasure, Fudj, and you should know me better by now. We don't deal in goods or bads here. As Pokemon fans, we've had our hands held for far too long, and I shall urge you to explore this review at your own pace and extrapolate from it what you will. I can answer only one of these questions with a definitive yes. I may have a weakness to certain types. Pokemon's 9th generation has drunkenly stumbled through the door no sooner than we just finished kicking the last one out of bed. How has it been 3 years? Why has it been 3 years? Why won't you give them longer than 3 years? Why did this game release within 10 months of another big 3D Pokemon game? What, you really looked at this and thought, yeah, we can speed up production? Today, with more barbs than a retirement home and more thrilling lines than a Soho bathroom, your best friends in the world over at Hard Drive Magazine are gonna get to the bottom of just what the hell the deal is with these new Pokemon games. This is Hard Drive Reviews, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. In the same way that Pokemon Sword and Shield courted controversy upon their release for their reused models and animations and cutting of the Pokedex, much is similarly being made of Scarlet and Violet's many alleged shortcomings upon their release. Let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Yes, Copperajah is in the game. Now let's talk about the technical stuff. Approximately a year before the publishing of this video, I, a former hobbyist stand-up comedian, decided to tip my toe in the water again and started gigging at my local venue on and off for a few months. One particularly cold, wintry night in a small, festively decorated tavern in Oxford, I watched a man who only referred to himself as Just P take the stage with what I can only describe as a device fashioned around his wrist that didn't look entirely unlike a Pip-Boy from Fallout. This device, it soon became apparent, was for holding his phone in place so that he could blast Pharrell Williams' Happy throughout the venue and effectively give himself a music-accompanied walk-on. In my months of going to this low-key, free-to-enter open mic night at this small, tucked-away venue, it should go without saying, this man is the only person I ever saw give himself a walk-on. Just P followed up his awkward, cricket-inducing walk-on with 5 minutes of casual racism, lazy sexism, and jokes about his ejaculate. This is what I'd call an embarrassing performance. And why do I bring up such an embarrassing performance in a video that's supposed to be about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? Well, one, because like everything I do, this video is actually about me. And two, because as embarrassing as that performance was, I'd wager that it was approximately 50% as embarrassing as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet's performance. There is simply never a moment in these games in which its technical optimization, or lack thereof, is not a humongous blimp-like distraction. The camera will pan through floor textures, revealing to you what's underneath the world. Pokemon and people and flowers will pop in with no warning constantly. NPCs will fade out of existence and merge together and walk together, and you'll get a selfie with it because you revel in chaos. And of course, frame drops. When I tell you there are frame drops everywhere, I mean that there are frame drops in the opening cutscene and in the credits. The credits! It's a black screen with some text scrolling down it. I could make credits without frame drops. Game Freak, commission me. I will make you some credits. Look, here you go. Wow! Kazuhiko Taguchi did the art. And it says here I was the most likable office member. Oh, cool. For all my and the fans complaining about starter evolutions and designs and whatnot in the lead up to this and previous games, I feel like it's gone somewhat under the radar that they decided to just make the fire starter's final evolution invisible. I mean, way to cut costs on creature designs, guys. If Pokemon Scarlet and Violet were a dish and you gave them to Gordon Ramsay, he would get so angry he would take flight. Never in my life have I played a game in a shape as rough as this, that is so lacking in polish and so clearly unfinished. My favourite game of all time is literally Fallout New Vegas, a game in which you can shoot a woman in the head and it de-aggroes her.
Could you maybe stay away from me? You're creeping me out.
Attempting to turn the camera 360 degrees in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is like inviting a demon into your house. Nuzlocke runs are a thing of the past. I'm trying to see someone complete the whole game without it spontaneously combusting when you turn the camera once. And yes, there's still no voice acting. And yes, for the second generation in a row, there is a gym leader whose whole gimmick is that they're a musician. And no, voice acting wouldn't suddenly make things all better, especially knowing what Nintendo are like with casting voice actors. The one instance of the game having voice acting I found to be hugely unfitting and wildly inappropriate.
Ah, you little fucking mug. Look at you, look. You sweat it up trying to fucking win, and you get beat, you little bitch, and you fucking rage quit like a little pussy. Get fucking good at the game, you little dickhead.
And what frustrates me the most about all of this presentational mayhem is that it totally overshadows a main series Pokemon game that in my mind is far more likeable than any of the others since Generation 5. The only main series Pokemon game since Generation 5 to have not made me want to trap Junichi Masuda in a monkey cage like a spider in a glass. Probably because he's not leading it anymore. Under new direction, Pokemon seems like it might finally be on track to realise its potential that's lied dormant for so obnoxiously long, but something or someone is holding them to this absurd new generation every 3 years release schedule, and it's killing them, and it killed them here. It's when you play Pokemon Scarlet and Violet that you realise retroactively that every main series Pokemon game since they went 3D a decade ago has been rushed and unfinished. Every single one has blacked out the screen in place of an animation whenever a character does something even remotely active. Every single one up until now has reused models and animations. Every single one has had bare bones post-game and inherently railroady linear design. Is it now too little too late? I don't know. I don't want to believe so, but really the only hope I can latch onto for the future of this series is the fact that this game's fundamental design, I believe, is a big step forward. Here's a clip of me talking about Pokemon from about 3 years ago.
And I guess something else that I can't believe I didn't mention in my Sword and Shield video, yeah, the route design is atrocious. Again, they're just big corridors. There's not even diverging paths on the routes themselves, man. Contrast this with Pacific Town in Ruby and Sapphire. You never have to go there. It's a place you can discover on your own, it's a reward for your exploration. There are so many more places like this in the first 4 generations, but the thing is that concepts like this sense of exploration and discovery tied in with non-linearity I think can be taken so much further. I think Pokemon absolutely could, and perhaps already should, have done more branching paths, more potential sequence breaking, if you even want to call it that, and more discovery. Hell, I mean, go full Breath of the Wild, right? Drop a player in a big open world at the start of the game, tell them very little and let them do their thing. Do they go east and run into a crazy powerful Pokemon that they're not ready for yet? Great, story. They go west and have a crazy random encounter with a super rare Pokemon, or maybe an unfixed event that's bound to happen but can happen at any time. Great, story.
By the way, disclaimer, that banned word right at the end came from me of the past talking, so no rules broken here. Now obviously hardly everything I said in that clip has come to pass, which is emblematic of Pokemon's still hugely wasted potential in my opinion, and I'm not going to pat myself in the back too hard for predicting Pokemon going Breath of the Wild style open world, because every series with no new ideas has put itself in a big grassy field with some piano music, but it speaks to what a faraway fantasy Pokemon even trying to innovate in the most basic ways seemed back then. When I said this, I didn't believe that it'd actually happen. I was just trying to illustrate how far away the series felt from that, and how dire the chances for any real change seemed. Plastered all over the marketing as it may have been, I simply did not believe that a Pokemon game hot off the heels of 3 generations of hallways would actually offer the unrestricted freedom of a genuine open world. I figured it might seem that way for a while, and then revert back to the classic guys blocking off 3 of the 4 exits of every major town. Oh sorry, you can't go that way, there's been an outbreak of Sogma railroading they've done before. But no, the world is genuinely open, shockingly so. After a certain point, you really are let loose with so little interference. You can go almost anywhere from jump. You can battle trainers, you can explore all the areas, you can get selfies with all the most muscular women in the region for reasons you won't introspect on. The region of Paldea is vast and exciting. Being based on Spain? I thought we dealt with these freaks last time. It is consistently visually interesting, and in terms of pure world design, it should be an absolute treat for the eyes. But unfortunately, the game does not work, and so it is not. Like, in concept, the likes of Cascarafa and Levincia are some of the most inspired settings in Pokemon games ever, but like so much of the rest of the experience, they're let down by the game exploding every 10 seconds. Look at this. Buildings don't have interiors in this game. They just don't exist. I mean, I know Spain's hot and all, but this is ridiculous. You can't be taking a siesta out in Glacido's grasp. And yes, NPCs do hound you at every major progression milestone, but at least you can choose when to interact with them. It's a far cry from moving 5 steps in Sun and Moon and unwittingly initiating another chapter of War and Peace. Have I mentioned I hate Sun and Moon, by the way? If you gave me a copy of Sun and Moon, my survival instincts would kick in. I'd pop into a little ball like an armadillo and roll away. The freedom in this game is real and so liberating, and it makes up for so much of where else the game lacks. And as a knock-on effect of the game's non-linear nature, reasonable difficulty makes a long-awaited return to the Pokemon series. The game dares you to take on challenges far above your level, knowingly or not. You may actually be forced to use your brain in some of the battles you find yourself stumbling across. Get down from there, Game Freak, you hurt yourselves. Some have complained that this contributes to a wonky difficulty curve. Taking on high-level stuff early means that everything before it will be made significantly easier once you inevitably have to go back to it. And this is true. Breath of the Wild is by far the hardest at the start as well. As a result of the freedom it gives you, it has a similarly wonky difficulty curve. And this difficulty curve has caused some people with tiny brains and dysfunctional genitalia to call for level scaling. Let me put this bluntly. If you support level scaling, I am putting you on a list, the purpose of which I will not explain. Level scaling is how you suck all the fun and dynamism out of a game. It's literally what Bethesda does. You are asking for a video game to do what Bethesda does. Do you hear yourself? Do you hear how ridiculous you sound right now? God, I could just slap you. A difficulty curve that starts high and slowly gets lower is far from ideal, but one that stays in the same place for the whole experience? Absolutely not. Part of the fun in games like Breath of the Wild or Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is the capacity to take on challenges that are far beyond your supposed current capabilities and come out on top anyway. Nothing beats the jubilance and excitement of a moment like that, to do something you weren't supposed to be able to. Level scaling totally robs you of even the potential of having an experience like that. It takes away so much of the possible variance between people's playthroughs and ensures that your time will be as average and milquetoast as possible. So, Yeah, I actually like a lot of the design choices Scarlet and Violet make. The mount is literally just the horse and paraglider from Breath of the Wild. Cool, I really like how it feels to control. If you need to steal ideas from that game to make your ones not suck, then fine, do it. And dare I say, the story is, well, I'm not going to spoil any super endgame stuff here, but it actually made me feel things. I'm pretty sure I registered an emotion during that last stretch. In the same way that so many of the towns in Scarlet and Violet should be breathtaking, so too should its ending. A far more competent example of writing and narrative maturity than we've seen in Pokemon in ages. The last few hours of Scarlet and Violet are some really ambitious stuff that I really respect, and yet again, it is dragged down by the game being a motionless eyesore at almost all times. During the game's emotional climax, it plays this super generic, wafer-thinned, emotional cue song that you've already heard like 8 times throughout the game in much less impactful moments, and it totally takes all the wind out of this moment's sails. That's another element of the game that fails it frequently. It's clear to me that the devs had time to put like 8 super whack MIDI sounding songs in the game total, and you hear them so much and they're so flat that they eventually end up harming every moment they accompany. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are games that frequently deserve better. And for the first time in a long time, I dare say have me feeling sympathy for Game Freak. Devs never want to release a rushed game, and they will obviously have known what state this was in before it came out. There's no doubt in my mind that some high-ranking corporate executive ultimately made the call to push this game out before it was ready to meet this ridiculous, increasingly unsustainable new generation every 3 years quota that they're set on for whatever reason. If these games were given an extra year or even 6 months in the oven, I honestly think they had a chance of being the best Pokemon games ever. Instead, they've ended up playing like the botched pirate copy of Shrek 2 your dad got you for Christmas because he forgot it was coming. This has been the Hard Drive review of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. For more epic entries in the Hard Drive cinematic universe, check out this here Hard Drive Mag YouTube channel and consider giving us a subscribe and ringing the bell to see what the rest of my fellow gaming Avengers are up to. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a lot of frustrations to take out. I think I'm going to go hold the Spanish accountable for Pitbull. You made it to the end! Very impressive. How about that? You're just in time to see the debut edition of Fudj's post-video poetry. In an effort to ensure that more people stick around to the end and see the end screen and end slides and whatnot, I've decided to regale you at the end of every video with a poem from my personal collection. I got a distinction at this in university, so no criticism allowed, thank you. This one's called Raise the Roof. I'm gonna raise the roof, he said, crashing into a ceiling tile with his giant head. He cried, watch me raise the roof, as he knocked over a rum and coke with his unyieldy hoof. This roof is gonna be raised, yelled he, and though everyone had left, he was completely unfazed. Though it may be expensive, it's always a laugh, going out partying with a talking giraffe. How droll. That's it for me. We'll see you next time.